was a moment that became a symbolic of the global Black Lives Matter movement after George Floyd was murdered by a police officer in the US, and their actions were even mentioned at Mr. Floyd's funeral. Sage Willoughby said outside court their acquittal was a victory for Bristol and racial equality.
Whitewashing history by calling him virtuous man. Sorry to swear. We didn't change history, we rectified history.
The prosecution said Rhiannon Graham and Milo Ponsford brought ropes on the day, while Sage Willoughby climbed the statue to help attach them before it was pulled down. Meanwhile, Jake Skuse was accused of rolling it the 500 metres to the harbour and goading the crowd into throwing it in. During the trial, the prosecution said they weren't Colston apologists, but that it was a matter of straightforward criminal damage, and who the slave trader had been was irrelevant. But the barristers for all four defendants argued Colston and his legacy was key to deciding the case, telling the jury their decision would reverberate around the world and urged them to be on the right side of history. Now, in his summing up, Judge Peter Blair QC told them to disregard such rhetoric and try the case purely on the evidence in front of them. And after deliberating for around 3 hours, the jury cleared all four of any wrongdoing.
John Seymour reported. Let's bring into the conversation Raj Chadha, who's a criminal defence lawyer with the firm Hodge, Jones and Allen. They acted for one of the Colston four mentioned in that report, actually, Jake Skuse. Mr. Chadha joins me now. So we hear that this is the process of rectifying history. By the same process, presumably, we could put Churchill's statue into the Thames. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. This case very much turned on its own facts. And it was a jury that decided, having listened to evidence for over 2 weeks, that the defendants had a lawful excuse. It is not a precedent for any other statute in any way.
How could you say that?
Well, because it's a jury decision. It was the jury that...
But as I understand it, this team, this group, are in the business of rectifying or illuminating history. So I put it to you again. A similar group who have those feelings about Winston Churchill, Sir Joseph Banks, whoever you choose, Florence Nightingale, they now have a precedent to which they can turn. Now, I'm not saying they won't go before the courts, but they can make a pretty powerful argument, Mr. Chadha.
No, again, it's just a fundamental misunderstanding about what precedent is. A precedent is set by a higher court. A jury trial can only consider the facts before it. And what this case turned on was the particular facts of Colston and how...
But no, I'm sorry, Mr. Chadha. It wasn't Mr. Colston who was on trial in Bristol. It was the four people who were accused of various acts of criminal damage. And I think you accidentally have just encapsulated the whole 11-day process. The jury thought Edward Colston was on trial. They didn't realise the four people who, I would still argue, but I appreciate they've been cleared, committed criminal damage. They got confused. The jury have cleared them because they've got Colston
yards,
on trial.
keep right to continue towards Tubbs Lane, A355.
Well, you just said it yourself. You self-referenced Edward Colston. It's irrelevant. Now, by the way, I hold no brief for Colston. I think there should have been some kind of democratic process in Bristol, and I think the good folk of Bristol would have voted for it to be gone, and I absolutely support that. What I don't vote for is mob law, which you seem to be embracing.
It's absolutely not mob rule. What it is the particular circumstances in this case. The Colston statue had a plaque on it which said he was the noblest and wisest son of Bristol, and the chief executive of a company that enslaved more Africans.
But there you go again. You're putting him on trial.
We're not putting him on trial.
You are. I say again, I hold no brief for the man. I absolutely understand that. But we are talking about... if a group of 100+ people chanting, throwing eggs, spraying paint and attaching ropes to... If that's not mob rule, Mr. Chadha, what is?
Well, the jury decided otherwise.
No, I appreciate that, but I've just explained to you that it is my belief the jury actually were putting Colston on trial, not the four before them.
Well, the jury were guided by the resident judge in Bristol. He sent through the legal directions.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London, Heathrow Airport.
To put forward a lawful excuse for their actions. Lawful excuse was that this statute was offensive and itself constituted a criminal offence.
And how can a statute...
We either believe in jury trials or we don't.
No, I accept that. I know that. I appreciate that. And there have been extraordinary jury trials in the past, not least the famous case of 1670, when and I'm sure you're aware of this, when two Quakers, William Penn and William Mead, were acquitted by a jury of preaching to assembly in London. They stuck to their verdict even when the judge had them locked up for 2 days without meat, drink, fire or tobacco. So I appreciate the value of a jury verdict. But lastly, how can a statue be a hate crime?
Because of its offensive nature. It's absolutely...
A statue is a hate crime.
Well, I think that's been
In a
used as
quarter of a mile,
No, that's
merge onto
I know you didn't
M4.
act for any of the four, but that's what one of the... I know your firm didn't act for this particular person, but that's one of what the Colston Four have actually said. A statue is a hate crime.
Well, what it was and what the judge agreed that it could constitute was an indecent display, indecent including the word offensive, or constitute a public order offence.
I'm very grateful for your time. Raj Chadha is a criminal defence lawyer. He's with the firm Hodge, Jones and Allen. They acted for one of the Colston Four. Listening to that, Dr. Timothy Brain, who's former Chief Constable of Gloucestershire Police, also has served in the past as a PC, Police Constable in Bristol. What does this mean for law and order in your view? Dr. Brain, good morning.
Continue on M4 for 5 miles.
When I was Chief Constable in Bristol a very, very long time ago now, was you have to be philosophic about jury results. Juries are always unpredictable. They judge the facts according to their own beliefs and biases. And one of the things I was listening very interestingly to the case put forward by the previous guest on your show. The reality is we have no idea what motivated the jury to come to its conclusion, because they are secluded, they make their own deliberations, and out comes the result. It could be based on the sound legal arguments of the lawyers present at the direction of the judge, or it could be based on absolutely none of that whatsoever. We don't know. And we just have to be philosophic about that in a country that accepts the principle of jury trial.
Grateful for your time. Sorry it's short, Timothy. We're a bit late on the clock already. Dr. Timothy Brain is former Chief Constable of Gloucestershire Police and indeed has served in Bristol. Now straight over to you. For some of you, of course, this is, and I say again, if we'd had some kind of process, a vote, a referendum in Bristol, I sense the statue would have gone, but that would have been observing law and order. I would argue the toppling of this statue is a monumental folly. Coming up after as we go elsewhere in the world, to the US.
From the news station, this is a Fox 4 News Alert.
A major development in the case of convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell tonight. Her lawyers are asking for a new trial.
That's in the US. And to Oz, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison speaking yesterday before the decision to now try and attempt to deport Novak Djokovic.
We await his presentation and what evidence he provides to support that. If that evidence is insufficient, then he won't be treated any different to anyone else, and he'll be on the next plane home.
Those stories, plus your verdict on the jury's verdict after the 7:15 LBC News headlines. Simon Conway.
Novak Djokovic is facing deportation from Australia after having his visa revoked in a row over his COVID vaccination status. Ghislaine Maxwell will seek a retrial after one of the jurors in her case revealed he raised his own experiences of sexual abuse during deliberations. MPs are warning that plans to tackle the NHS care backlog could be derailed by a lack of staff. LBC weather, dry and bright to start in the east, but rain, sleet and snow moving in, a high of 11 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. The A21 Sevenoaks bypass stays closed southbound between the M25 and the Sevenoaks turnoff. It's all down to an accident. The investigation works are still taking place. In Harrow, the A404 Watford Road is closed southbound outside Northwick Park Hospital, and that's following an accident, and it's very busy on the approach. On the underground, the Central Line trains are running westbound between Leytonstone and White City, and eastbound between Bethnal Green and Leytonstone, and the rest of the line, which is running with severe delays. On the trains, there are delays of about 15 minutes on Greater Anglia and Stansted Express services via Cheshunt, and Southern services can't run between Purley and Caterham, and that's following a track problem.
LBC. The Wi-Fi's down. Wi-Fi. This is broadband rage. It happens when your internet drops out and the red mist descends. Why suffer like this? Get the UK's first unbreakable Wi-Fi. Only BT's new hybrid home broadband is backed up by EE's mobile network. One day all broadband will be like this. 4G
3G coverage required. 4G connection takes up to 175 seconds. Verify bt.com/verify hybrid.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973 LBC.
These guys have just discovered the better way to buy their next car, and they're all over it. They've gone
In
online
2
to
miles,
Kazoo, picked up
junction
the car they
4B,
love, and
exit
can
towards
collect it
M3,
or have it delivered to their
M23.
door. And they'll get a 7-day money-back guarantee to make sure they love it. Play us out, boys. Can you buy a car that's guaranteed to leave you happy? Kazoo, yeah, you can.
Look forward to flying again as Singapore Airlines brings you Southeast Asia. Explore Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia and beyond on board the world's most awarded airline. Enjoy an unforgettable experience with incredible service and warm hospitality. Flying to Thailand from just £397 return. Book with flexibility today at singaporeairlines.com. Singapore Airlines, a great way to fly. Date exclusions and terms apply.
Hello, Sunny speaking.
Hi Sunny, it's Alex. Is Steve free?
Steve, I have Alex on the line.
Oh, put him through. Hi, Alex. Hello? Hello?
Fed up with a difficult-to-use work phone? Hi is an intuitive touchscreen business phone that makes hybrid working easy. With a removable tablet and business mobile app, you can take your calls anywhere. Hi for Business. Designed, developed and supported in the UK. Visit hihi.co.uk.
A few too many? Lots of us are feeling it. Those extra pounds adding extra strain to our bodies. Now's the time to get things started, one way or another. To shop smarter, eat better, and move more. Getting started is easier than you think. For free tips and tools to lose weight, search Better Health. Let's do this.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
In a quarter of a mile, at junction 4B, exit towards M3, M23.
7:21 the time, coming to your calls on the toppling of that statue. A monumental error, I would argue. Phil, you'll be the first caller. Front pages of newspapers. It's a bit of a split, actually. I have to say, were I editing one of the newspapers last night, which sadly in a previous life I once did, I think I would have gone with the statue.
Exit at junction 4B, then keep right at the
thrown
fork.
into the drink. Daily Telegraph, go with it. Colston 4 walk free, as jury says no crime was committed. The Daily Express as well, statue vandals cleared. But where will it all end? Question mark. And the Guardian as well, 4 cleared over toppling of Edward Colston statue. The Metro, what's called splits its splash, which means there are 2 effectively front page stories.
Keep right
Statue
at the
Liberty
fork.
is one, which again is, and there's a picture of the joyous protesters, because of course they're not vandals, the joyous protesters and cleared vandals who threw the statue in the drink. The other story,
on
which would have been a very
M25
strong
south
contender
for
as well for the front
1.5
page, I would
miles.
argue, is the fact that it does appear, and I do, of course, if we learned anything from the pandemic, is that it's best not to make predictions, but it would appear that we are emerging from the worst, from the gloomiest. The Metro says that just go with your flow, and there's a picture of one of those lateral flows, or I understand they're called lactic flow tests. No need for a PCR if you've no COVID symptoms. A similar theme is struck by the Daily Mail. We have liftoff. Britain. Foreign travel test rules to be scrapped. 7-day isolation cut to 5. You remember we tried with the government minister yesterday to get a bit of progress on that. It's the turn of the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps later in the show, and indeed the Times reflects that as well. Their front page boost for holidays as travel tests are scrapped, which just leaves the deported world #1 tennis star Novak Djokovic, who of course I'm calling Novaks Djokovic. That is ongoing even as we speak, and we're going to Australia for more on that later in this hour, I think, certainly later in the show. And the front page of The Sun, Baroness Bra in cop quiz. This is the Conservative peer and bra tycoon Michelle Moon will be quizzed by police over a claim, I hope we heard that word, that the 50-year-old millionaire sent a racist
In a
text
quarter
message.
of a mile,
And the
at junction
Financial Times has a
14,
political story, which
use
is
the left 2
quite right for
lanes to
their
take the
audience.
A3113 exit to
Pressed to
Heathrow
scrap
Airport.
£12 billion tax rise in Tory cost of living revolt. A revolt led by the most unlikely Conservative rebellion or revolting Tory.
Use the left 2 lanes to exit at junction 14, then keep right.
There was a revolt of sorts, of course, down in Bristol a while ago, but they were acting legally, lawfully, it would appear. Phil in Penrith, your view, or your verdict on the verdict. Good morning.
Well, it looks a bit like Bob Wilson, eh?
Well, that's what I say, but the solicitor says it's not because they have a valid reason. They're putting history right.
Continue for half a mile.
He could talk the high leg of a donkey, couldn't he?
Sorry, sir? Pardon?
He could talk the high leg of a donkey, that bloke.
Well, probably could say the same of me, in all honesty, but yes. What do you think should have happened? I mean, I find it extraordinary there's not even criminal damage there, because it was defaced.
I'm concerned about the future of places like the Blue Coat School in Liverpool.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto Airport Way, A3113.
Country that were built with the profits from the money that was given to people as compensation for the ending of slavery. I mean, these people made an awful lot of money out of it, and these establishments still exist. Are they going to start having a go at those as well?
Well said, Phil. By the way, Downing, as in Downing Street, Downing was the surgeon who subsequently bequeathed the street where the Prime Minister and others were, who served on, in part, who had worked on vessels carrying slaves. So if you take it literally, you probably need to tear down the nameplates of Downing Street, because that actually, for many, would fall under this. Same sort of thing. Phil, thanks for getting us started, 7:25. Val in Basingstoke. Val, what do you say? Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Nick. Fantastic show. Love it when you're on. It's an open door for vandalism all over now, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Do you think it... I mean, you see, this is... I mean, a lot of people are getting excited. I think it's a shocking decision. I think the jury had Colston on trial and not the four in front of them. But do you really fear now that other statues could be toppled?
I absolutely do, yeah. I really, really do. Of course, because, they'll find a reason for it. They'll just use any reason, like St. Nelson on his column,
gosh, yeah, I forgot.
And all sorts of things.
Well, we're going to have to get a cherry picker to get a rope on Nelson, of course, because it's quite some distance below.
At the roundabout, take the second exit onto Southern Perimeter Road.
Stop me going now. Popping down to a paint shop, getting some paint, defacing Nelson's. I'm rewriting history. We'll come back to that in a moment. We must reflect other stories as well. We go to the US.
From the news station, this is a Fox 4 News Alert.
A major development in the case of convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell tonight. Her lawyers are asking for a new trial.
Now this after a jury member admitted telling the others of the jury of his own experience of abuse that possibly, obviously we don't know, none of us were sitting in there, could have swayed the jury. Let's bring into the conversation Niama Pramani, who is an attorney in California and CEO of West Coast Trial Lawyers, who's been closely following the case. Okay, where does it, in your view, Niama, where does this take us?
The Western Perimeter Road roundabout, take the second exit and stay on Southern Perimeter Road.
Disaster for the government. You have a juror here who has essentially admitted to perjuring himself, and I'll tell you why I think he perjured himself. Because there was a question on the juror questionnaire that said, were you or any of your family members a victim of sexual abuse? Apparently he said no. He goes into the jury deliberation room and he convinces some undecided jurors
exit the roundabout onto Southern Perimeter Road. Continue on Southern Perimeter Road for 1.5 miles.
We have a case going on here where a very controversial story where a statue was toppled and 4 people have been cleared. None of us will ever know the identity of the jury. They will never ever be made public. That is something that we hold sacrosanct in this country. Very different in the US, Nima.
Absolutely. Jurors here have a right to speak to the media. As prosecutors, we hate it when they do so, especially after a guilty verdict, because it only can result in legal problems like here. And this particular juror identified himself by first and middle name. He's Scotty David.
Lastly, as an expert, do you really think they'll go through the whole process again, Nima?
I think so, because if you have juror misconduct and it results in actual prejudice, that's grounds for a mistrial. And that's precisely what we have here. You have a juror who didn't tell the truth. And the reason I know he didn't tell the truth is because the government raised this motion and Judge Allison Nathan, the judge in this case, appointed an attorney for this juror. That means both the government and the judge believe that he committed a crime. And not only did he perjure himself, it changed the outcome of the deliberation, at least according to this juror.
Let's talk again soon. Thanks for all your input, Nima Pramani. Californian attorney, CEO of West Coast Trial Lawyers, who's been following the case closely. 7:28. This really is a global show because we're off to Australia now, where, as we understand it, Novak Djokovic is currently holed up in a hotel in Melbourne. He had been going over, of course, for the first big tennis tournament of the year to play on the Australian Open, but now there are questions over his paperwork, whether he will proceed, whether he won't. On and on it goes, and lawyers being involved. Well, let's bring into the conversation one of my LBC colleagues, of course, here Saturdays and Sundays from 7 a.m. He was the #1 tennis player, and really with his form, his team often hoped that he would be detained in hotels, but unfortunately, he was allowed to play. Andrew Castle joins. This would have been one of your best results on tour, Andrew, if you'd been locked in a hotel.
Being locked in a hotel, I would have avoided the many losses I've had over 8 years. I lost in 50 countries in 8 years. I think it's a record.
Well, I would have beaten it if I'd been allowed to play. Andrew, where does this take us? Do we look to the Djokovic team for allowing this to happen? Have we got a fight going in on Australia between state government and national government? What we got, Andrew?
Well, what do you think changed between him getting on that 14-hour flight from Dubai to Melbourne and his arrival at Tullamarine Airport, where he was held under police guard and in isolation? What do you think happened? I'll tell you what happened. A wave of, righteous, to be honest, righteous anger at the possibility that Novak Djokovic was being treated than other Australians who have been locked down really in difficult circumstances, as we all have been around the world, but Australia particularly bad, over the previous 20 or 22 months. So there's that charge of hypocrisy. It's a bit like the Downing Street party, Nick, isn't it? People do not like to be told to follow one rule and then see others be treated in a different way because they're somehow elite. So the bottom line is he's being deported at the moment, but there's an appeal going on to see whether or not that stands. So, time will tell. Next few minutes, it could come out in your airtime.
It could, actually. If you were part of Team Djokovic, would you have said, yes, let's go to Australia? Would you have cited caution? What would you have done, Andrew?
I would have followed the rules as they appear to have done, submitted the paperwork that was agreed by Victoria, the national government, and Tennis Australia. 2 independent panels said that he had a medical exemption, yes, for a COVID vaccination. That was name blind and anonymous in all ways. And then suddenly he gets to Melbourne Airport and this fuss absolutely kicks off, and it's become a major diplomatic incident. So in a way, I feel sorry for Djokovic, which is not easy for me, but I do feel that he's a political pawn being blown in the wind with federal elections 4 months away. Frankly, if he just came out, like Boris Becker, his old coach, said, and said,
in 300 yards at the roundabout, take the third exit onto Beacon
then
Road.
That would be fine. Or, of course, he could have the vaccination, Nick, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Lastly, he was trying to win, as I understand it, a record-breaking 21st Grand Slam. Andrew, let's talk about the psyche. Let's say he does allowed to stay, he does go on to play. How does he get this out of his head? Because when he walks on court, he can't be thinking about past legal battles and his stay in a hotel.
Bottom line is, Nick, even with an ankle tag, this guy is probably likely to get to the semi-final or final of this tournament. Even if he's hopping around there with some bit of plastic flapping about, he's that good. And quite frankly, most people don't like him as much as the player that he's playing against every time he takes the court.
In 100 yards at the roundabout, take the second exit onto Stanwell Road.
That ever lived. So,
always good speaking with you, Andrew. Catch Andrew Castle. He's here on the weekends when I'm here. Saturdays, Sundays from 7. LBC colleague, and of course was British #1. I always tease him, but he was the British #1. Let's be honest about it.
Exit the roundabout onto Stanwell Road.
We're late to the news, so Andrew, you know how it works. 7:32. This is Breakfast with me, Nick Ferraro, and LBC News. Simon Conway.
Novak Djokovic has been denied entry to Australia by the country's border force and now faces deportation. His visa was cancelled on arrival in Melbourne after officials decided his medical exemption from COVID vaccination rules was not sufficient. He'd been hoping to defend his title at the Australian Open. Lawyers for Ghislaine Maxwell say she intends to request a new trial after she was convicted of sex trafficking. One of the jurors in her case claims he discussed his own experience of sexual abuse during deliberations, which may have influenced the verdict. Petrol retailers have been accused of ripping off drivers by not passing on wholesale price savings at the pumps. The RAC says unleaded fell by 2p a litre in December, but should have come down by 12 pence. LBC weather, dry and bright to start in the east. Rain, sleet and snow will continue moving in through the day, falling as heavy snow for northern hills. A high of 11 degrees.
This is LBC.
In 200
Hi, I'm
yards,
Dr. Nikki
turn right
Kanani,
onto Hatton
GP
Road.
and Medical Director of Primary Care in England. Omicron cases are rising fast, so it's good that 12 to 15-year-olds can now get a second COVID-19 vaccine. Vaccines give your children the best possible protection against the virus. Get your 12 to 15-year-old vaccinated before term,
Turn right
or as
onto
soon as it's
Hatton
been
Road,
12
then turn
weeks
left
after their
onto
first
Staines
dose.
Road.
Book online or find your nearest walk-in centre at nhs.uk/COVID vaccination.
You love Zoom for video meetings? Now, choose Zoom to power your phone communications too. Zoom Phone works seamlessly within the Zoom app as your business phone system. Zoom Phone's secure HD audio and enterprise-grade reliability keep you connected to your teams and your customers. And it's easy to use on
Turn left
mobile,
onto Staines
desktop,
Road,
or desk phone.
A315.
Empower your workforce with Zoom Phone. Zoom, how the world connects.
Life is about sharing those magical moments, and food shouldn't be any different.
Staines Road, A315.
For over 35 years, Marouche has been perfecting this experience.
Mile at the roundabout, continue straight to stay on Staines Road, A315. Mile, turn right onto Shaftesbury Avenue. Take the next right onto Shaftesbury Avenue, then turn left onto Roslin Avenue.